All right, it is Sunday, the weekend of January 21st, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action for the indexes this week, starting with the NQ. Shorter week, but still an interesting week. We had kind of predicted that we could see a bit lower here after we saw all these rejections up here at 17,000, call it 50-ish, 40-ish. And we got a lot of those rejections, and every time we tried to push to new lows, we did end up getting bought up anyway. Saw a bunch of different times to push down here, attempts to push down here, but getting bought up every time. And the last one on Wednesday kind of making a new low and then just reversing hard into the rest of the week. So that did kind of look like a level that made sense to hold. That was the last consolidation before kind of producing the low of the previous leg there. So it kind of makes sense that it stopped there, but we can only kind of retest these bottoms so many times before we kind of have to pick a direction, right, and kind of reverse. And that's what we saw kind of like 4 days in a row here, really, of trying to push below this previous all-time high level at 16,770-ish there. Getting bought up every time, so makes sense that we did pump from there, and a big pump it was. So there's not really a lot of technicals to talk about going forward from here, other than, we could see a pullback to one of these levels as support again. You could see it come back to 17,040. That was previously resistance on the NQ to be used as support before moving higher. But right now we're at new all-time highs, and we are in blue sky. Who knows how much higher we can go? What do you think about that price?
Yeah, I think ideally, if you're bullish, and who isn't, you'd want to keep that range, but there's nothing wrong with it coming down a little bit lower and then continuing on. I think this next week is going to be pretty interesting to see what happens. We want to see, that's a pretty strong weekly candle look. You can see how it used it as support and is immediately going. And on the monthly, that could end up going pretty high before we see a real sell-off. So yeah, upwards is definitely.
I mean, it's going to be interesting the rest of this month and in February. So we'll have to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, kind of a similar look on the S&P. We had a similar call, thinking like we got all these rejections up here. Let's close that out. And we wanted to see lower. And this one actually did make a more convincingly, went to a level that made more sense, right? This was the area that had needed to be gained to try at the highs again. We did get the highs. Even though we failed there, then that needs to be retested as the level to hold. And we basically, more or less perfectly tagged that exact level and then just ripped higher. So if you were able to see this failure here and take that as a short, good for you. You made some really good profits on that, but now we've kind of gone and held the level to hold and broke above the previous level to gain, and now we're at new highs. So kind of the same thing on as the NQ here on the S&P futures as well, just kind of looking for new highs. We're already at a new all-time high. Again, doesn't mean we couldn't come back down to test some of these levels before moving higher, but again, same thing, blue sky. Who knows how much higher we could go? You see anything like different that stands out to you on like a little bit about the S&P with its technical setups?
No, it's basically the same thing. It does look a little bit more ready for a return to that previous level, but it looks basically the same.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about the RTY? I know that you had pretty much called this exact level that it bounced off. It's just kind of exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, see, so this was the level that was used to produce the low here, which continued down, and now that we're up above it, that's the level it's a level we would expect price to interact with, especially right here. So that's why that level exists right there. And so it came down and just about tapped it. What's the low there?
It's off by like 70 cents.
Yeah, it's pretty small there. So if you were looking at the smaller time frame and you saw them come all the way down, this would definitely up here would signal, entry down here for higher. And that's exactly what they've done. It looks pretty good. On the 4 hour, it definitely looks like reversal. On the daily, It's doing really well. It's doing as well as it could be expected to. If it closes up above this level and then holds this level, we should continue up and probably gain up here to about 2,000 would be what we'd be expecting if we held and continued up. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking about the higher time frames in particular, I personally just think that this level right here makes sense as like the kind of the low of this move here. I still agree with all your analysis about levels that need to be gained and held, but I do personally think, if we look on the weekly here, I mean, this just looks like quintessential, like the perfect setup to move back to the highs here. I'm actually believe the RTY is probably the, everyone's talking about big tech. I think that this is probably the sector to pay attention to. This small caps. I think they're going to have a bigger move this year. Certainly more exciting than the other charts, but I think that this is going to end up holding here and moving higher.
I think so too. It may take more than one touch to get through 2,000 though, as you can see here.
Yeah, no. I think that we could see some consolidation kind of up at this area again. It could even come all the way back down to 1924 and kind of try to hold there again and come all the way back up here.
Right.
So, but if that's predicated on this touch at sort of 1900 and whatever that is, below
being the low.
Yeah, that would being the low would essentially be the perfect catalyst to send this higher. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Right.
Let's go ahead and talk about gold. What do you see here? I think this is kind of like tagged our level 2007 essentially perfectly.
Yeah, that's a pretty good tag there. Let's look at it slightly lower, and you can see they didn't close below it. They held it. That's pretty interesting. And on the weekly, it's just this wick down, but a close up above. So that's a pretty good signal for going up. We aren't quite there. Let's see. We'll want to be closing up at 2067 before we start expecting to close up here. I think.
No, I see that as well. I mean, that's around the area that kind of failed to hold, that created this leg down, but it ended up creating a higher low here, so that's why I still think we're going to see those highs retested again on gold. I also think that this level that it went to and has gained some movement upwards from is kind of, if we look at the weekly chart, I mean, that it's kind of like the perfect level, right? Like all these different touches in the past. That actually is also the level that failed to produce the leg down last year in this whole consolidation range. So, even more reason to believe this is an important level. But every time we come and touched it, we were never able to gain, and then we finally did. So there's been a lot of price interaction at this level, which is why it makes so much sense that this was the level that ended up getting the most interest. I think that this leg before that, let's hide this just to make this easier to see. This wick down here in December on the weekly, it came quite a bit below that, but all that ended up doing was making it another higher low. And so for this leg here to use that level 2007 as another place for a higher low just makes total sense. I mean, we essentially we spent so much time interacting at this higher end of price that we're just in a very clear uptrend on gold right now, in my opinion. Let's go ahead.
I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something else to say?
Nope. Just that level is an interesting one to me right there. You can see how it's been wicking down to it and then up to it in the past.
2043 as well. Yeah. I mean, clearly that's going to be a level that needs to be regained before we can see your level at 2067. You called it. Yeah, something in there. I see that as well. We'll have to see what happens. This was a short week, so we'll have more trading days just to kind of see what happens, but we'll talk about that next week. Talking about the Dow, again, very similar to these other index charts, except that this one has been more of a sideways consolidation pattern instead of really a lot of volatility like the Nasdaq or the S&P, but very similar as well. Kind of made a brief lower low and then wicked way up above the level that needed to be gained. Technically, we made a new all-time high here, but it did not close there, and actually ended up closing below the previous all-time high established during this consolidation. But that doesn't really change anything because we're still in a very clearly defined uptrend, and now we're gaining levels. So this screams to me as well, moving higher. Not too much to talk about. Just a lot less, it's just been a tighter range than the other indexes, but we'll have to see if we can keep pushing here or if it needs to come back down to use something as support to move forward. What do you see?
I like it coming down and holding that level there that's identified on the chart. That's a pretty good one on the daily. It is a little murky, but
yeah. Well, you're on the 1 hour
it's
now,
right
so.
there. Yeah, that's.
You can still see it even there. I mean,
it's
that's clearly
really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it'd be better as a small box, but that's a really good level. I really like that. So I could see it coming down and holding that level and continuing up. If it doesn't hold that level, it starts to get a little spookier.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it sounds
see.
more likely to come down here.
I think the last area for that would be kind of that lower line, right? Because that also is like the high of the consolidation there. We kept wicking into and then broke to produce this leg. It would make sense to me that we could still see it come back down there, and that would still be, if this is a low, we could use that as a higher low there. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I still think that there's also equally high chance that we could just blast off from here, but
absolutely, I think that's a pretty good likelihood.
Let's go ahead and talk about oil. What do you think of oil, just at a first glance?
I mean, it's going up. It's closing above that level again, and so, I mean, it did close up above that level. It came down and lost it, but I think we still both believe that it's going up long term. You can see here on the daily that it has made this high here, and then we've closed up above that level. So it's a pretty interesting look. We aren't quite closing above the level, so it may have to come down again, but it's almost there. You can see how it almost closed above the level that we needed to gain, but not quite. So yeah, I mean, I'm
with you there. It's definitely uncertain
up here
from a technical perspective in that regard, but one of the things that I like about this chart in particular is that if we look at the 4 hour, we kind of, I don't remember if we put this in or if I just put this in later, but this line here at 70.50, I mean, we've seen a lot of interaction there, and we even came and tagged that line. And we're continuing to make a series of higher lows here, while also kind of interacting with this level to gain more consistently. I think that we're going to see oil kind of take off in the next couple of weeks. I believe that. I do agree with you that we could see it come back down a little bit. Before that happens, I mean, I could see it coming back down to like 72 right there. Looks pretty nice. I'm tagging that and moving through. But again, it could also tag that same level that we have marked out and move higher. This whole idea about being bullish on oil here is predicated on this leg down here from December, down here at 67, the 67s here, being the low.
Right.
So I think that our idea about moving higher here is we can't see these levels lost. But until that happens, I think we're moving higher.
Absolutely.
Cool. Now, as far as the dollar is concerned, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it would have been nice to see it close up here, but that didn't happen just yet. So here on the 4 hour, you can see how it's testing these ranges in here. And it's actually doing a pretty good job of holding up in this upper range. Because if we were to come down to the daily, you can see, this large wick, which it's using as support. So basically, if it holds this upper range, we will see 104 again. but if we don't, it'll come back down to 102 first, and then it'll have an opportunity to come back up again. What do you think? So either down to 102 here, or up above to 104.5 ish.
Yeah, I think I still do believe that we're going to see higher here. I also think that it's very likely that we could see lower first. I kind of really like this level at 102.5. If I look at the 4 hour, I kind of see, like, you know, we keep not being able to necessarily close above this range here. And then the thing that really kind of makes me think we'll see a little bit lower is, you know, when we tried to push back here on these wicks, they kept selling off. I think that we'll at least test the lows of this right here, say 103.15-ish. And if that can't hold, we're going to move either to 102.8 or 102.5, kind of where I was looking. And then if we really, really kind of dumped further, kind of looking more at your area, kind of further down here, so suppose maybe 102, something like that. But I still don't believe that the dollar's going to break down. I think that even if it comes back down to these lower areas in the 102s, 101s, we could see that just kind of be slurping for higher. I still think we're going to 104s.
Can I look at something?
Ahead,
yeah. Let's see here. You can see this level right here, how that rejected and produced the new low, and we're now up above it. And at least here on the 4 hour, I mean, you know, that's kind of a test there, but you see what I'm saying here?
I do see
there is
that,
a little bit of an opportunity to come down below this level, hold this 102.8 and continue up as a pretty good
anything like that. I think is pretty much in line with our thesis. I think that it could use any of the levels that we discussed to move higher.
Anything in here
at this point. I mean, my opinion is that I think the dollar has found a low and is in the process of reversing higher, right? So, you know, that level at, what is that, 100.6, 100.8, something like this area. I think this was the low of that leg, and I think we're in the process of moving back up to retest the highs or potentially make new highs. That's my long-term thought process with the dollar.
And it looks like that's working out.
I think so. Yeah.
Right.
At this point, I guess what I'm saying is we're looking for longs on the dollar, not shorts anymore.
Right.
Let's go ahead and look at KRE. You had a great prediction. I think we both kind of predicted this exact, like, kind of looking price action where we wanted to see it retest somewhere in the box here. I said maybe we could, you know, if it was really strong, just test the top of the box and then rip higher. And you said, you know, you'd really like to see it tag through the box, hit the bottom of it, and reverse higher. And you were right. You got that perfect tag. I think almost just a penny off of our level that we marked there.
Yep.
On the low. And then we have ended up reversing higher. So nice call there. I think that if we can see this continue a little bit higher, we'll have kind of regained some of the things that we've lost on that consolidation. The nice thing about KRE is, you know, it has been only like kind of long form corrective moves down and really large pushing, like direct rippy moves higher. That's kind of indicative of a lot of strength, in my opinion, to the upside. So I would like to see this kind of regain 52, even, you know, 53, and then we could start talking about finishing that push to 56.50. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think immediately, if it can hold like in there, it's looking really strong for continuation upward. That doesn't mean, you know, below that means it can't continue. Just that would be a very, very bullish look if it came down to here and continued up. What do you think about that level?
I mean, I like it. I mean, that also coincides with the area that we've seen wicks into, so that makes sense. And also this wick here touching it as well. So yeah, I mean, I could see that. That would be a very strong look, for sure. There's also a level here at 50 even, where you could
Right.
see some interest.
Right.
That probably makes more like quintessential like sense, like just there's a lot of interest at that level.
Mhm.
But absolutely, I mean, you could just see. I mean, on these, generally when you get really strong reversals, you will see moves like you're describing, where, you know, everyone thinks it's gonna, we're all gonna long right here. Well, okay, well, you're not gonna get that because everyone's thinking that. People are just gonna buy, and that's how you get these moves, right? Like these, where there's no chance to get in after it just goes. So I think that 50 is a cleaner look, but that's also why I think this idea that you posted is very possible. But yeah, I guess there's not too much to talk about. It was a short week and kind of everything just went up. Even the things that went down ended up getting bought up. So kind of just, you know, maybe we're at the start of this bull market again and everyone's just going to buy. We'll have to see. It's going to be an interesting week for sure. Next week, we're going to have cleaned up the charts and kept kind of only the major levels from past price action moving forward into 2024. So that way we can get a lot of the noise out of the way when we're talking about some of these major levels going forward for you guys. But thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. See you next week.